What if I told you that sometimes the people closest to us see things we completely miss? That a single conversation could turn a family's entire world upside down? In the best possible way? Picture this: a massive estate on the outskirts of London, the kind of place that makes you slow down your car just to gawk at the gates. Inside lives one of Britain's wealthiest property tycoons, the sort of bloke whose phone calls can make or break entire shopping centers. But here's the thing about money. It can't fix everything, can it? This particular mogul, let's call him Richard, had everything you'd expect from a billionaire lifestyle. Marble everywhere, artwork worth more than most people's houses, staff who moved about like they were walking on eggshells. But at the heart of this palace lived an 8-year-old girl named Sophie, and her story was breaking her father's heart every single day. You see, Sophie had been diagnosed as blind since she was barely walking. The specialists were certain: no light perception, no visual response, nothing. Richard had thrown money at the problem like you wouldn't believe. The finest doctors, cutting-edge treatments, equipment from Switzerland that cost more than a Ferrari, but nothing worked. Nothing changed. The guilt was eating him alive. He'd been traveling for work when Sophie was born, missing those crucial first weeks. By the time he came home properly, the damage was done, or so he thought. He convinced himself that his absence had somehow caused this, that if he'd been there, things might have been different. So Richard did what many parents do when they read drowning in guilt. He threw himself into work even harder. Board meetings became his escape. Conference calls were easier than facing those unseeing eyes that reminded him daily of his failures as a father. Meanwhile, Sophie wandered through rooms bigger than most people's entire homes. Dressed like a little princess, but living in what everyone believed was permanent darkness. The house felt like a beautiful tomb, stunning to look at, but cold as winter inside. But then something interesting happened. A new cleaner started working at the estate. Emma was her name, a young woman from Manchester who'd moved down south chasing better opportunities. She was skint, working multiple jobs to send money back home to her mum and little brothers. It's the kind of person who'd never set foot in a house like this, unless she was being paid to scrub its floors. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. Emma wasn't looking to cause trouble or make waves. She needed this job desperately. But from day one, something didn't sit right with her about Sophie's condition. She'd walk into the playroom, and before she'd even made a sound, Sophie's head would turn slightly towards the door. Just a tiny movement, but Emma noticed. When she'd arranged fresh flowers in the crystal vases, Sophie's gaze seemed to linger on the bright yellow daffodils. And once, just once, when Emma accidentally knocked over a glittery snow globe, Sophie's eyes tracked its movement across the Persian carpet. Emma's heart started racing. But what could she say? She was the help, wasn't she? Who was she to question doctors who'd studied for decades or challenge a man who could buy and sell her entire street? For weeks she kept quiet, but she also started paying closer attention. She deliberately dropped sparkly items near Sophie, watching how the girl's pupils would contract slightly in bright light. She'd place toys in different positions and notice how Sophia's hand would reach unerringly for the one catching the most sunlight. The evidence was mounting, but so was Emma's fear. If she was wrong, she'd lose the best-paying job she'd ever had. If she was right, well, that meant something terrible had been happening for years. The moment of truth came on a particularly bright Tuesday afternoon. Richard's study overlooked the conservatory where Sophie was playing and Emma was supposed to be cleaning the windows. Instead, she found herself watching the little girl who was sitting in a patch of golden sunlight with her favorite stuffed rabbit. Emma made a decision that would change everything. She pulled out her phone-S torch and gently directed the light towards Sophie S.'s face. Not to frighten her, just to see if there was any response. And there it was. Sophie's pupils contracted. Her eyes followed the light. She even reached out her tiny hand towards the beam. Emma's knees nearly gave out. This child wasn't blind. She'd been trapped in a story that wasn't true. That's when she heard footsteps behind her. Richard stood in the doorway, having come down from his study for some papers. His face was like thunder. Here was his employee, shining lights in his disabled daughter's eyes. What kind of person does that? But then he saw what Emma saw. Sophie's eyes, bright and responsive, tracking the light across the room. And then the little girl spoke, her voice soft but clear as a bell. "It's really bright, isn't it?" Richard nearly collapsed. For years he'd believed his daughter lived in complete darkness. He'd built his grief, his guilt, his entire relationship with her around that assumption. And now, Emma found her voice, though her hands were shaking. She explained everything she'd observed over the past month. The small signs, subtle responses, all the tiny moments that everyone else had missed or dismissed. She was terrified of overstepping, but she couldn't stay silent any longer. What followed was chaos. Richard called in new specialists. Not the ones who'd written Sophie off years ago, but fresh eyes, willing to look again. Test after test was run, and slowly the truth emerged. Sophie had a rare visual impairment that severely limited her sight, but she wasn't completely blind. With proper therapy and training, her vision could improve dramatically. The original doctors hadn't been malicious. They'd simply missed something incredibly subtle. Richard wept that night, alone in his study. For years, he'd kept his distance from Sophie, thinking he was protecting her from his own inadequacy. But she'd been waiting all along for him to truly see her, to believe in her potential. The transformation was remarkable. Within months, Sophie was identifying colors. The blue of her teddy bear's ribbon, the green leaves in the garden, the golden light that danced across her bedroom ceiling each morning. Richard canceled meetings to read picture books with her. He learned to finger paint, getting more colors on himself than on the paper, just to hear her giggle when he painted his nose purple. But he never forgot Emma, the young woman who'd had the courage to speak up when no one else would. He offered her everything. A massive pay rise, a promotion to head of household, even shares in his company. But Emma just asked for one thing, that Sophie'd be given all the love and time she deserved. The things that money genuinely can't buy. Word of Sophie's story spread quietly through their community. People found hope in it. A reminder that truth sometimes hides in the most unexpected places, and that kindness can move mountains when wealth and power fail. The grand mansion transformed from a monument to guilt into a proper home filled with laughter. Music lessons, and the sound of a little girl discovering a world she'd been told she'd never see. Not because she needed the job anymore. Richard had made sure she was financially secure, but because she'd become part of their family. To Sophie, she wasn't just the woman who cleaned the house. She was the big sister who'd saved her world, and Richard. He learned to measure his success not in property deals or profit margins, but in the light that sparkled in his daughter's eyes when she spotted a rainbow through the morning mist. Sometimes the most powerful people in the world are powerless to help those they love most. Dumped, but sometimes, just sometimes, the person with the least power has exactly what's needed. The courage to speak truth to power, and the heart to never give up hope. If this story's touched something in you, if it's reminded you that the smallest acts of courage can reshape entire lives, then please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And do not forget to subscribe. We've got loads more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. But here's what I really want from you. Drop a comment below telling us about a time when someone else's kindness changed your life, or when you had the courage to speak up for someone else. Your story might be exactly what someone scrolling through the comments needs to hear right now. Because at the end of the day, whether you live in a mansion or a bedsit, we all have the power to see what others miss, and to be the voice for those who need one most.